Hi everyone, my name is Jack Warren. I'm with WS Radio. I'll be your MC today, and we have a proclamation from the mayor's office declaring this National Space Society Week here in San Diego. And yes. We want to welcome you all to the conference, the International Space Development Conference. And in light of that, I'm going to read the proclamation, and let's hope that I do a good job. All right, you guys just root me on here. This is from Mayor Bob Filner, the City of San Diego Proclamation, National Space Society Week. Whereas, from May 23rd to May 27th, 2013, members of the National Space Society gather to promote and discuss the positive social, economic, technological, and political change that is needed to expand civilization beyond Earth to settle space and to use the resources there to build a more hopeful and prosperous future for humanity. Whereas each year the National Space Society comes together with leading engineers, you all, scientists, educators, policymakers, and business executives from civilian and military, commercial, entrepreneurial, grassroots sectors of society to exchange ideas on how best to achieve their goals. And whereas this year's conference, the annual conference, and actually this is the 32nd annual conference, I don't need to remind you, but it's not in the proclamation, I'm just helping him out here. Whereas that we will honor Dr. APJ Kalam, former president of India and father of India's space program; Buzz Aldrin, participant in the first manned mission to the moon; Bas Landstrup, organizer of the first planned mission to colonize Mars in 2023; Dr. Mae Jemison, the first African-American woman in space; and Chris Ferguson, commander of America's final space shuttle mission, and many other honored and distinguished guests that are present here today. Whereas in partnership with the San Diego Space Society, the National Space Society has chosen to hold this year's annual International Space Development Conference in San Diego, California, in recognition of its state-of-the-art aerospace industry, high technology, military, and world-renowned educational institutions. Now therefore, be it resolved that I, Bob Filner, the 35th Mayor of the City of San Diego, do hereby proclaim May 24, 2013 to be National Space Society Week in the City of San Diego and encourage its citizens to recognize their efforts on behalf of the community. Thank you, Bob Filner. I'm going to present this now to the chairman of the conference, Mr. Dave Dressler, and the director of this event, Mr. Neil Sperling.
Executive director. I'm sorry, executive producer.
Executive producer, pardon me.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. And now it's my great honor to present this very distinguished proclamation to the gentleman who is the chair of the Executive Committee for the National Space Society and a real moving force within the entire organization, Mr. Mark Hopkins. Mark? Good price. Ladies and gentlemen, Buzz Aldrin.
I want to welcome you all to the International Space Development Conference, the ISDC. This is also the annual conference of the National Space Society, and it's the premier conference in the world on space for space advocates. National Space Society strongly believes, and it's not just a matter of belief, it is also true for technical reasons, that the vast majority of the resources of the solar system lie in space rather than on the Earth. And as a consequence, by tapping into these resources, we can smash the limits to growth that you've heard so much about, because those limits to growth assume that the only available resources are those which exist on planet Earth, which are tiny compared to those of the solar system as a whole. For example, the sun puts out 1 to 10 trillion times the amount of energy currently consumed by the human race. And by bringing a small portion of that down to Earth by such means as space solar power satellites or other ways, we can solve our energy crisis and greatly mitigate our climate crisis as well. You're going to learn about that at the ISDC, as well as a vast amount of mineral resources which exist in space. And indeed, one of our highlights of the conference will be Dr. Kalam, the person who is sort of like the Wernher von Braun in the United States, except he's the Wernher von Braun of India, a very world-renowned scientist and engineer in the aerospace field. But unlike our Wernher von Braun, he went on to become president of his country. He'll be addressing us at the gala, and he'll be talking about the importance of space solar power to the future of humanity and the potential for international cooperation. And with that, I'll give it back to Conference Chair Dave Dressler.
Thank you all for being here. Some of you traveled over 30 hours to get here, and we truly appreciate that. And San Diego is honored as a city to have you come here and check out our America's finest city, as a matter of fact. This is going to be a monumentous event, and I really am excited to kick this event off with Baz Lansdorp, who says we're sending people to Mars in 10 years for good. I mean, what could be more instrumental than that? I'm very excited about that, very honored to have you here. We have some distinguished guests, Mr. Buzz Aldrin, Dr. Buzz Aldrin. Phenomenal gentleman, thank you. Very honored to have Buzz. Buzz has a lot of books to sign, and I'm very grateful for you doing that. Thank you, Buzz.
Ladies and gentlemen, Buzz Aldrin.
Many, many years ago, I cut my eye teeth on the future of manned space by being asked by Lori Garver, who was the executive director of the National Space Society, if I would accept the job of chairman. And I enjoyed my brief tour, learning a lot about the volunteerism that all of you people represent. I just thought I'd try and give you a quick thumbnail sketch because I know the mission of the National Space Society is to settle outer space. Well, we were a fine bunch of 24 Americans who reached the moon in the 60s and 70s. We didn't settle the moon, that was not the plan. In the future, I believe that we, a country that knows more about the moon than anyone else, will lead the other countries in their quest to land on the moon. And if they choose to make it permanent, that is their choice. We will help them do that, primarily by occupying Earth, Moon, L2 first as a control of robots on the surface for science, for commercial, to mine the ice crystals in the dark areas of craters, a commercial enterprise, not a government enterprise. We will construct the base on the moon, the International Lunar Base. We will construct it, they will land it. The other countries will land it. How do we know how to construct that base? We're going to practice doing it and find out all the bugs in it on the surface of the big island of Hawaii. Then we're going to execute it for the international partners on the surface of the moon without NASA astronauts being there. and probably not commercial people because it's hardly affordable. What we will do instead is to test the components of the interplanetary spacecraft and a test bed at the space station, which also will help Inspiration Mars in its inspirational mission at the beginning of 2018. We will test the spacecraft components in doing various things between cislunar space and Mars, such as a flyby of a comet, perhaps, a visit to one or two asteroids, but not to check out the resources. We are checking out the spacecraft. And that's why I agreed with President Obama when he laid an objective of a human mission to an asteroid. It's not to characterize that asteroid. We will do what we can when we're in the vicinity of it, but it is to test the interplanetary spacecraft so that then later we can unmanned land components of that on Phobos. Then we can send an interplanetary spacecraft there unmanned as the return trip for the astrocontrollers who will later go in an interplanetary spacecraft and occupy Phobos for a year and a half, while long duration, high efficiency, low fuel consumption rockets will deliver sequentially, as we did on the island of Hawaii, as we did on the surface of the moon, and as we will do on the surface of the Mars, enabling permanent settlements delivered by cycling orbits that have been pioneered not just by me initially, but with the great assistance of Purdue University. So I would recommend that all of you kind of check out these milestones en route. My book, hard for you to see, I'll hold it still. There's no doubt who wrote it. That's wrong. Leonard David wrote it. I would highly recommend the foreword written by my very able youngest son. In it, you will find things that are background to my vision for space exploration, entitled, not Vision for Space Exploration, but Unified Space Vision. Unifying 5 things: exploration, science, development, commercial, and security. Those same 5 elements are the elements of the nation's space policy. There is another foundation that I'm eagerly starting because it may make the biggest impact on how we do things in the future, because it will examine space policy, national space policy, from the very, very beginning on up, with its good, very favorable policies that led to great successes, some very not so good policies or efforts to embark on the implementation of a policy that were rather disastrous and set back the space program. Sorry to use the word disastrous, but it really was, because we look at the position now where we didn't have a replacement for the space shuttle, so we have to finance the Russian space program to have one. My experience with the National Space Society that these people here represent, and its outreach in foreign countries, especially to where a chairman is in Australia. Very active, and we encourage great international activity. And thank you very much for coming here to San Diego. I enjoy being here, and thank you very much for your attention.
Buzz Aldrin, everybody. In my role as the executive producer of this conference, I would now like to present Buzz Aldrin with the official ceremonial National Space Society scissors so that we can do this ribbon cutting and get this conference started. Buzz?
Laura, would you bring the ribbon?
Does this cut red tape?
It does, Buzz, it does. We brought it today.
Okay.
Make sure,
Let's tie Mark inside the ribbon.
Good idea, good idea. All right. Okay. Anyone else?
No, that's enough.
That's all right.
There are the cameras.
Heinz
Yes.
Frank,
Yep.
I officially declare this conference open. Thank you.